All right. So welcome to AARP and Local Motions Get Back on Your Bike and Biking Basics. As you may know, this is a monthly program. We started last month and this month, and we're going all the way through September. It's the second Thursday of the month. So if you aren't great at remembering dates like I'm not, you can just say, okay, second Thursday and put a star on that because the next one will be on July 8th. And we'll be talking then about extending your ride and what tools and equipment you need to take with you for long journeys. So today's program is really exciting. And I'm really happy that Local Motion is our partner because they've got lots to tell us today. My name is Linda Bowden, and I am the AARP Vermont Volunteer State President. And thank you folks so much for joining us today. As you know, AARP is dedicated to enhancing the quality of life for everyone. And as we age, and one of the ways we do that is through events like this. And please be sure and check our website. I'll put it in the chat, which is aarp.org/VT for all of the events that we have. I was talking with Terry earlier, and she was saying she loved the biking programs, the baking programs, the lectures, the movies for grown-ups, paint and sip. So we have a number of different offerings that we have. And also the AARP VCC, which is our virtual community connection, has got different kinds of programs from all over the US. So many different sorts of things. But a huge welcome to our partner today, Local Motion, and Eliana Fox, who is the program coordinator there, is gonna start our program. So kicking it off to you, Eliana. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Linda. Welcome, everyone. So my name is Eliana Fox. I'm a program coordinator at Local Motion. So today we'll be discussing best practices for planning routes on and exploring Vermont's many bicycle trails and paths. Next slide. So just a quick roadmap and housekeeping. Our goal for today is to build on the lessons from our last presentation by discussing how bicycling skills, gear, maintenance, and more apply to exploring Vermont by bike. And we'll go further by diving into some of the tools that are available to help you find and plan those bike rides on those trails and paths. And if you missed our last presentation, don't worry, we'll review some of the safe cycling and maintenance basics from the previous workshop in this workshop. Next slide. So just a quick overview. If you're not familiar with Zoom, here's some quick directions. You're currently muted with this button in the lower left-hand corner. You can unmute if you're called upon. You can also turn on your video if you'd like. We love to see your faces. You can also change the layout of what you're viewing using this button in the upper right-hand corner. And if you have a question, go ahead and type it in the chat. And you can do that by clicking on the chat button in the center of your screen. And that will open up the chat window, and you can go ahead and type your questions in that box in the lower left-hand corner. Mary Catherine is here and we'll be monitoring those questions. So we'll save plenty of time, but go ahead and type them in if you feel inclined to do so. And so without further ado, let's get started with a sneak peek of one of Vermont's best places to bike, the Causeway Island Line Trail. Here's a quick video. Thanks. So doesn't that just want to make you hop on your bike and get out the door right now? I know it does for me. So Vermont is filled with miles and miles of trails like the Causeway, like the Island Line Rail Trail here in Burlington, to ride your bike. So many great opportunities. But before you head out the door, there are a few things to consider in preparation for your ride. Not only are these preparatory steps important for your safety and comfort, but they'll also ensure that you make the most out of your riding experience. So you'll have less to think about the maintenance or where you're going while you're out enjoying Vermont's trails. So we'll quickly review the ABC Quick Check, bike fit and feel, and important gear to have out for a trail or path ride. And then we'll get into the new stuff, which is route planning and route planning tools. Next slide. So as a reminder, I'll let my MC pull up the slide really quick, sorry. Okay. So as a reminder before you ride, make sure your bike is in safe working condition. And I would say make sure to do this check a few days in advance of your planned ride so you have time to address any potential issues. You don't want to be heading out the door and arriving at a trailhead to find that your bike is not quite rideable. That would be a huge bummer. And the great thing about an ABC Quick Check is that you can see and feel and hear for all those issues. It doesn't require a ton of tools. So air is air in the tires, brakes are your brake levers. Chain is part of that drivetrain that helps you go when you pedal. And quick release levers are how your wheel attaches or how your seat post moves up and down. And then the check all over is one final look over of the whole bike. So next slide. So for your air, the tire shouldn't be super soft when you press it, no more than half an inch. If it's low, go ahead and pump it up. And as shown in this photo here, the air pressure range is written right on the side. And you don't need to be at that maximum pressure. That will make your ride a little bit harder. So those bumps will be a little bit more intense if you're pumped all the way up. So just know that that is a range and it is safe anywhere within that range. For your brakes, both brakes should fit a thumb between your lever and the handlebar. And make sure to check both your brakes individually. For your rear brake, which is on the right side of your bike, the bike should be able to slide a little bit when you're squeezing that. For the front brake, which is on the left side, your bike should not move. You should kind of just stop and almost like you would flip it over because the front tire should not move at all. And then I'll say, sorry, one quick thing about the chain. It should be rust free, move those pedals backwards, make sure it sounds okay, move smoothly. If it's sounding a little bit dry or feeling like it's getting caught, chain lube is your best friend. Your quick release levers should be closed tightly. So again, those are on your front wheel usually and around your seat post. And the last thing I like to do before I go out for a ride for the check all over is check for any rattles or off noises. Look for loose pieces or anything sticking out. One thing I like to do is lift up the bike slightly off the ground and drop it. It's safe to drop, and that way you can listen for anything. You can also try picking up one wheel at a time and dropping it, just so you can listen for those things. Okay, next slide. So bike fit is critically important for the comfort of your ride. So the way to tell if your bike fits you, stand over the top tube and you should be able to have both your feet comfortably on the ground. And when you start riding, you should be able to reach the handlebars without your back feeling really stretched out. And so when you're adjusting your seat to make sure it's the appropriate height, you can stand next to your bike near the seat, and the seat should be about as high as your hip, give or take, depending on your comfort with that. And when you're pedaling, your knees should have a slight bend when they're all the way extended. The most important thing, always, is that you're comfortable. Okay, next slide. So even when you're bicycling on roads or on off-road paths or trails, basic behaviors and rules of the road still apply. So let's go over a few of those. Signaling is your way of communicating with all users. If you're on the road, it's with drivers and pedestrians and crosswalks, but it's just as important when you're on a trail or path. It's communicating with people who are walking, other bicyclists, to let them know where you're going, if you're turning off the path, if you're pulling over, to stop for some water. And so this is just a reminder that these are your motions. Your left turn is your left arm out, your right turn is up like this, or you can use your right arm if that's what you're comfortable with. A stop is the downward motion, and slowing down is the downward motion and moving side to side. Okay, next slide. So safe cycling, as a reminder, a bicycle is a vehicle, and bicyclists tend to do the best when they act and are treated as drivers of vehicles. And so following these rules of the road, it keeps you safe because it makes you predictable, and again, is a way of communicating with the other users around you. Next slide. So as I kind of just mentioned, be predictable. That's make your moves, don't second guess them, use your signals. Being visible, that means bright clothing if you have it. Lights are critically important so that all other users can see you. Be defensive, as if you were driving a car, cautious, alert, paying attention to other people around you. Communicate using your hand signals, eye contact, and be confident you belong on the road or the trail. It's public space and we all get to use it. And as always, your safety comes first. Next slide. So as we mentioned in our last workshop, bicycling, even in short increments, is really good for your health. Even 30 minutes a day can lower your risk of lung disease, cancer, diabetes. And importantly for this workshop, biking a few days a week for a few minutes a day is critically important if you're planning a longer than usual ride on a trail or path. So next slide. So before going through the effort to plan a longer trail ride, be sure you do one, or I would recommend even a few, test rides. It's important for building up your physical endurance and understanding your limits. And of course, it's really important to make sure your tush is comfortable and has built up a level of comfort and endurance, spending time, as I like to say, in the saddle, and that just means spending some time on your bike. If you go out with no initial riding on a longer ride on a trail or path, you're definitely going to be sore the next day. And so trying those few rides in advance, a few minute increments in advance of a longer ride, will give your body a chance to adjust to spending that time on your bike, to build up that toughness that you might need for, say, an hour-long ride or a 45-minute long ride. And you can have the most comfortable, perfect fitting bike in the world, but if you go cold turkey, you're going to be sore. And so just be aware of your fitness level and your limits. It shouldn't feel too hard. It shouldn't hurt too much.
Yeah.
That's what bicycling is all about. So next slide. Gear. So I always recommend wearing a helmet. To me, it's like a seatbelt. I don't get on my bike without it. Beyond that, it's good to be prepared with a flat tire kit and a hand pump, especially if you're hitting or going out on some of these gravel trails like this one. So this is the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail, and those are some of our Burlington e-bike library bikes out on the rail trail. And so if you're good about checking your ABCs before you go out, you shouldn't have to worry too much about a flat tire, but it's always good to be prepared. One thing I would recommend if you're going out on some of these rail trails is it's good to have a wallet. Some people I know have a smaller wallet that they keep with their bike permanently that just has a little bit of cash and not your hard ID, but a photocopy of it, in case for some reason you want to stop or you need to get home via taxi for whatever reason. So That's something I'd recommend. And then another thing, of course, I mentioned in a previous slide, how important lights are for your visibility, even on paths, just in case you get caught out after dark, it's really good to have those so that you can see where you're going. And if anyone is coming towards you, they can see you too. And of course, if you're out in our beautiful summer, some sunscreen is really important to protect your skin too. Okay, next slide. So just a quick thing on helmets. I always wear one, like I mentioned, and that's what I recommend for you too. But your other behaviors, such as signaling, being predictable, following the rules of the road, are just as important for keeping you safe. And also their safety in numbers. So riding with your friends, with a couple people, makes you safer. Next slide. Okay, so now we're getting into the new material, the bulk of this presentation. And so as a beginner, one of the most helpful things you can do besides attending a workshop like this one is to make sure you're comfortable with your route before you head out. There are a lot of app-based and online tools available, but if you're like my dad who hates computers and phones, you can also check out hard copy guide books and maps, such as books published by the Rails to Trails Conservancy. They have great books with maps and descriptions. So just so you know, all of those resources are available to you, not just the online ones. And what's critically important about knowing your route and knowing where you're going is it makes you safer, because you don't have to think about where your next turn might be. You can focus on your riding and your other behaviors and the things around you, and also enjoy it. And so whenever possible, and thinking through your route, choose a safe route that has low traffic or no traffic with good shoulders, or a separate bike path, which we're talking about today. And try to avoid areas you might not be comfortable with. So next slide. Oh, sorry, back one. Okay, so this is Trail Finder. Sorry, I missed this one. This is a really good place for you to start if you are not sure what trails are around you. So as you can see, this map of Vermont and New Hampshire has all of the bicycling trails in these two states, and you can filter it by location and town, by difficulty, by activity type. We're talking about bicycling today, so that's what I have this map that's shown on the screen filtered to. And so, like I said, it's really good for finding out just what's around you, not necessarily mapping out and planning a precise route, but definitely just for seeing what's around you. And it's helpful because it includes stats for each trail, including what kind of pavement you're riding on, and maps that show amenities like parking and bathrooms and shops along the trail. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is a couple screenshots of the All Trails app. This app I find is very easy to use because it has routes that are already planned out for you. So on this first screenshot, all the way to the left, you can see, you can select a trail, and in the middle screenshot, there are a couple buttons at the top. Directions will show you driving direction to a trailhead. Navigate will take you to a map that you can follow while you ride. And then the button all the way on the right-hand side of this middle screenshot is My Map or Download. And that will show you an overview of the route, and it has distance and an elevation map, which is really important to see where the hills are, so you know how much you're doing. And with this app, you can also track your ride and share reviews of the trail if you feel. So I've found that's really user-friendly and has really helpful, clear info, like the elevation gain map along with the physical route map. Okay, next slide. So Map My Ride, this is another online tool, and this is really good and really easy for plotting out a specific route on your own. So you can map out your route online at mapmyride.com. And then when you finish your ride, say you're riding from home, like I plotted this route here, this loop in Burlington. When you're done plotting it online, the website will give you the option to say, do you want to send this to your phone? And then you'll get an email, or if you download the app, it will automatically sync. And so you can see the loop that you plotted out. And so that's really cool for seeing the total mileage and elevation gain over a loop that you plan out. And it's also a way that you can keep a map of your whole loop in front of you or with you when you're out on a ride. Okay, next slide. So Strava is another one of these activity tracking apps. It's really useful for seeing where the most popular segments or stretches of road, bike path are. You can see all of these orange dots are called segments, but they're just parts of roads or trails. And what's cool about them is you can see the elevation gain for each segment. So you know where there's a big uphill or a big downhill. And so, for example, we have this segment of the waterfront bike path, the Island Line Trail here in Burlington. And so, you know, if you're heading north from the downtown waterfront park area, there's going to be a little bit of elevation gain heading north. So it's going to be a little more effort. And then when you're coming back, it'll feel a little bit easier going downhill. And so yeah, that's what's useful and cool about Strava. Okay, next slide. So last thing I wanted to go over before we jump into the trail highlights. Vermont has many different types of trails, hiking trails, mountain biking trails, equestrian trails, shared use paths. And following trail or path etiquette keeps all of our trails and paths in good shape, and it makes them safe and respectful for all types of users and all ability levels. This etiquette that I have here is not hard and fast, and it varies depending on what type of trail you're on, but I think this is these are generally a good rule of thumb to follow. I know it can be a challenge when some users don't follow this guidance, but as I've reiterated, and I think we are trying to reiterate with all of these workshops, is that being in control of your own behaviors makes you safer, and your safety always comes first. So much like the rules of the road that we've covered, trail etiquette means being predictable, riding your bike on the right side of the path in the direction of traffic, right? Except when you're passing. Communicate and yield to people walking. So be courteous, slow down when you're approaching from behind, and move to the left, ring your bell and give a greeting. What I like to do when I'm approaching someone from behind, I'll say, hi there. So it gives them some time to turn around, see me, and recognize that, okay, I need to move to my right so that I can pass them on the left. So that is a really important one. Different paths have different rules. So if you see signs, be sure to follow those trail rules or path rules. And traffic laws kind of still apply. So, you know, like we've talked about earlier in this presentation, try to follow the rules of the road. They're still helpful and will keep you safer on a shared use path. And your safety always comes first. So on shared use paths and trails, they're great because many of them provide space away from cars to ride together, side by side. I love that. Just be aware for other path users and get in a single file line when others are approaching you, so that they have their space and you have yours. When you've safely passed others, then you can go back to riding side by side. Okay, next slide. So I picked a few different trails around the state to go over today, and I just want to, before I get into the stats on each of those, I just want to give you some caveats. So easy, moderate on these trail stats is a relative term. You know yourself and your limits best. And a second caveat is a gauge for the elevation gain. So my general rule of thumb is if you're climbing more than 500 feet in 10 miles, that ride is going to feel a little more laborious. If you're under 500 feet of elevation gain in 10 miles, that will usually feel pretty okay, unless you're going up one big hill. And in that case, the apps and the elevation maps are your best friends to look for those big hills to go up. All right, next slide. Okay, so we of course have to start with our beloved Island Line Rail Trail, which includes the causeway from the tip of Colchester up to the islands from Burlington. And this was the trail that it was of course shown in our opening slides. And Local Motion just launched this new map that you can see on the right side of this screen. You can visit that at vtbikeped.org. And this features eateries, shops, parks, parking, and critically public restrooms that are all along the Island Line Rail Trail. And what's nice about knowing where the parking is when you're planning your route or thinking about how far you want to go, you can park anywhere along it. There's no need to say, I'm going to start all the way in the south at Red Rocks Park and bike all the way up to the islands 12 miles. You can park anywhere along the route and go as far as you want. And that's just part of knowing what your limits are. And so just be aware that even though a trail may say it's 12 miles or 20 miles, doesn't mean you have to do that whole thing. You can park along the way and do what is best for you. Okay, next slide. So this is the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail, which starts in St. Albans and heads north and east towards Richford. It's just over 26 miles, not too much climbing. You can see here 643 feet. This is a photo of a bridge that goes over the river in Sheldon that I took my parents on. So this is a really nice, really fun, easy trail. And the only thing I'll say about this trail in particular is you will pass some of these county highways, like you'll have to cross them. So in that case, slow down, stop and get off your bike to cross the road, and then hop back on when you're safely on the other side of the path. All right, next slide. So a Central Vermont gem, the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. It's currently 34 miles long, and it's only two separate sections of it are complete right now. But when it's totally complete, the trail will be 93 miles long, spanning from Swanton on the west side of the state to St. Johnsbury on the east. And so the sections that are currently open are between Cambridge and Morristown. It's about 17 miles. And then the eastern section is Dansville to St. Johnsbury, which is about 15 miles. And so that the St. Johnsbury to Danville is about 500 feet of elevation gain. Or sorry, this one is 1,237. So that's quite a bit of gain. And then Morristown to Cambridge is the one part that I've been on. It's beautiful. It's that I also did with my parents. Not as steep to go up. It's only about 500 feet over that 15 miles. And we have a little short clip so you can see parts of it. You can move to the next slide. All right, so the D&H Rail Trail. So for those of you who might not know, D&H is the Delaware and Hudson Rail Trail. And this is on the very western side of the state, western central, and meanders back and forth across the New York State border, which is kind of cool. So this is a relatively flat trail, not too long. As you can see, this northern section of it, which starts in Castleton, 10 miles, only 233 feet. So nice flat trail. And like I said, I think it's really cool because it meanders to and from the New York State border. So next slide, and we'll talk about the southern part of it. So here's another section of the D&H Rail Trail. 10 miles, a little more, a little bit harder, a little more elevation gain. Still not too bad, 500. And this one starts in Paulette and goes down to West Rupert, and at that point, I believe crosses into New York State. Okay, next slide. So the Stowe Recreational Path, this is a really popular one. What I will say about it is it's short, just a little under 5.5 miles. But if you look at that, the difficulty and elevation gain we have here on this slide, it says easy to moderate because you have 338 feet of elevation gain in just 5.4 miles. So even though that doesn't seem like a lot in that short amount of time, you can expect the hills to be a little bit tougher, maybe a little bit steeper, because it is that much elevation gain in that much time. But it's good for a quicker but slightly more intense ride, maybe. Okay, next slide. So that concludes our section on trail options, route planning. But up next, Bevan, who is our last speaker, will discuss practices for extending your ride. So you can take what you've learned here about what trails are out there, looking for trails, how to plan a route, and work up to add an extra mile on that ride or a couple extra minutes. And so that's what's on tap for our next workshop. Next slide. And so just a few quick upcoming events. So the Snow Farm Vineyard Concert Series is sponsored by Local Motion, and it's at the vineyard that is right on a bike route at the top, just past the top of the causeway. And so lots of great concerts going on all summer long there. And then Bike for the Lake is a fundraiser ride to clean up the lake on both the New York and the Vermont side. This year they have loops of various mileage that are all along the shores of Lake Champlain, and those are planned out for you. And they have lunch served, and so that's a great opportunity to maybe do a group ride while sponsoring a good event to clean up our lake. And then, of course, the National Bike Challenge, which we talked about in our last presentation, is going on until September. And of course, the Tour de Farms bike tour is happening in September, and there's a discount for AARP members with that. And with that, next slide. We'll jump into some questions, but I just wanted to give a quick plug for our bike ferry, which you saw at the beginning of this presentation. Summer service, which is daily, so it'll be running every day, starts June 21st. So the summer season is coming right up. Great opportunity to start planning your ride and taking a quick ride on our bike ferry on the causeway. So with that, we can jump into some questions. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Eliana. That was awesome. Thank you for that exciting program. It's fun to see all the different opportunities we have here in Vermont. So Jenny had a question about if there is an AAA type service for bikes.
That's a good question. So the one thing that I'm familiar with that I don't know if it's quite like AAA, but some employers will do guaranteed ride home. So if you are biking as part of a commute or something like that, and for whatever reason you get stuck in the weather, you get a flat tire, there are resources for kind of calling a cab and they'll pick you up. I'm not sure how that applies outside of employers. I don't know if Mary Catherine has any other ideas on that one.
I do know that, just to add to that, I know at one point in time, Old Spokes was doing that. They had a service that you could call, and they had a cart that they would bring out to you for a cost, but that was before COVID. So I'm not sure if they're still doing that kind of thing or not. So
yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah. Okay. I had a question too, is as far as the type of bikes for these rail trails. Did you have any kind of information with regards to that? Is there a special bike we have to have, or?
I wouldn't say so. I think a lot of bicycling depends on the comfort of the rider. Usually, if you trust your bike, it will get you where you want to go. For the rail trails, you might want to look at some thicker tires. That doesn't necessarily mean you need a whole nother bike. But just speaking from experience in riding with my parents, my dad took out his road bike that has skinny bald tires, and he did just fine. He's in his 60s and he loved every second of it. So I would say it depends on your comfort level. If you want a little more traction, you can look at getting some tires that are a little bit wider and have some traction on them as opposed to the smooth ones. But you don't need any particular bike. As long as your bike is comfortable and you feel comfortable and confident riding it, I'll say you should be fine to ride on these types of trails and paths.
Okay, that's excellent. And I know you can talk to your various bike shops, and they can give you advice too, as far as whether your bike could take a larger tire or not, depending upon the makeup of that particular bike. Tree has asked about recordings. Yes, I am recording this particular presentation. And for all those folks that have registered, we'll send the link after we get it to them. And it will be posted on the aarp.org/BT YouTube site. So Daniel is asking, in your opinion, and it may be going back to another slide, but which one of the websites you mentioned is best for showing where to park a car along the trail?
Yeah, I would say Trail Finder, which was the first one we went over. And that one, like I said, is good for seeing where the trails are. And then you can click on the specific trail you're interested in, and it'll pop up in a new window and will show you directions to get to the trail. The map has little parking bubbles along it, so you can see where there are places to park and other amenities along it. So I think Trail Finder is probably your best bet for that.
Okay. Dee has a question asking if AARP has any upcoming rides scheduled this year. Oh my gosh, I wish we did. I think we're going to be evaluating what our program has been like this year as well as last year under COVID, and how we might modify it and put things together. But right now, there aren't any planned rides. We're actually not sanctioned to do that sort of thing until after September. So maybe there'll be a new ruling regarding that. And of course, I would be more than happy to schedule something along those lines, but we can't as an organization do that yet until everybody gets an all clear. As you can imagine, AARP is a large organization with 52 different locations. So it's not something that we can do at the drop of a hat, but there's no reason you can't get together with other folks to do that kind of thing. And I was going to mention that the Map My Ride, what I love about that particular website that you mentioned is that you can share that. If you come up with a route that you'd like to have others join you on, that's a really good site to do that kind of thing. I know when we were planning our rides, AARP was planning its rides, but the first year we did this, where we were really out in the fresh air having rides. I did it through Map My Ride so that folks could get that particular route ahead of time, so they knew where we were going to be riding. So that is a good reference that you made to that one, Aliana.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just, Mary Catherine just reminded me, in terms of the rescuing, if you're out on a ride. So a Local Motion, if you rent a bike from us to ride up the Island Line Rail Trail, of course, our Trailside Center is right on that bike path. If something happens to your bike, we'll come up and rescue you, whether that's fixing a flat tire so you can keep going. So that is a service that our Trailside Center staff does provide. So thanks, Mary Catherine, for mentioning that, and just so everyone knows.
Great. And I noticed that there are electric bikes that the Green Bikes has got now available throughout Burlington. I'm not sure exactly all of the different rules with regards to how long you can be on the bikes, but that's something also to investigate. And can you tell us just a little bit, Eliana, about the programs that you have with regards to Local Motion and bike rental or that sort of thing?
Yeah, so Local Motion has our Trailside Center, which rents, we do couple hour long, day long rentals. We have regular bikes and electric bikes. I think we're even bringing back some tandem bikes this summer. So those are the bikes where you have two people seated on them at the same time and you're both pedaling. So that's kind of a fun activity you can do. So yeah, those are the bike rentals that we have that are great for going up and down the island line.
Great. And do you have any idea, Tree was asking, if when the new section of the bike path is going to be done? Do you have any clue about that? That's happening near you folks, right?
Yes, it's right outside our office. I'm not quite sure. I don't think it's going to be done in time for this season. So this summer, we have a really short 1-block detour around our office on the Island Line. It's not too bad to get around. We're looking forward to that path being done, but not this season, I don't think, unfortunately.
Great. Another question that we have here, Eliana, is can you summarize what Local Motion is?
Yeah, so Local Motion is a statewide nonprofit advocacy organization. And when I say advocacy, I mean we advocate for communities that are to be walkable, bikeable, and livable for everyone. And so that takes many forms. My part of it is coordinating a lot of our e-bike lending libraries so that people have an opportunity to try an e-bike out for free for a couple days if they've never done that before, putting on educational workshops like this. We also, Mary Catherine does a lot with education with our Bike Smart program, which is dropping off bikes to different schools around the state so that kids have an opportunity to learn how to ride a bike in PE class, which I think is just awesome. We also, like I said, have the Trailside Center, which does bike rentals. We also run the ferry across the causeway, which you can see in this picture here. And so the ferry, I'll touch on that for a second because I got a direct question about it. You don't need a reservation for it. It's strictly by donation. So whatever you pay helps us keep it going. And so like I said, that's starting full service June 21st, which is really exciting. And then so the other parts of Local Motion's work, like I said, advocating for better bike and walk infrastructure in different towns around the state, doing pop-up demonstrations of that infrastructure. So putting in temporary bike lanes and crosswalks with really cool paint designs and that sort of thing. I think that's pretty much everything that Local Motion does. Mary Catherine may add more, but I hope I covered most of it.
Okay, there's another question from Susan here. Any indication, of course, you know everything about all the trails in Vermont, right, Eliana? But anyway, she's asking about, is there any indication of when the Lamoille Rail Trail between Morrisville and Joe's Pond might get done?
That's a great question. I'm not sure. I do know that the state is investing a lot of money in the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. I think it's supposed to be completed sometime in 2022, sometime next year, which would be great. So I hope that helps a little bit. It's it's a work in progress. We may be able to, Mary Catherine, I don't know if you could go back to the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail slide, but I think that map has an indication of when each section is, what phase they might be in. Okay, so let's see. So the westernmost section, this map might be a little outdated, but so the areas in green, Cambridge to Morristown and Danville to St. Johnsbury, that's what's open. And then all the rest in red is phase 2. So presumably that's what the state Department of Transportation is working on right now with all of that good big investment. And so, hopefully within the next year or two, I would say, we can hope for some additional segments on that trail.
Great, good answer for that. And you can always check people's websites too, as I see that there are available to find out what the latest conditions are, hopefully that are updated and on other kinds of maps. So the bike ferry right now, from what I recollect, until the 21st, which is really next weekend, right? Father's Day or something like that. It's open, is it a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? Is that right?
I think it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, so the weekends. Yep.
Yeah, so it is currently operating on the weekends, and then it'll be full-time, is what you were saying.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, let's see. I am not seeing any other kinds of questions here. If anybody else has any questions, we need to get them now. Anything else? The only thing I'd add is with these kinds of long trails, as far as your bike goes, Eliana, what sorts of things with these kinds of trails should you do after your ride with regards to the bike?
So when you say after your ride, you mean like where to store your bike, or like activities to do afterwards?
I would say, so what would be the maintenance that you should think about after going on a rail trail along these lines?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will always direct you back to the ABCs. Those are great things to check for with these rail trails, because they're gravel. It might be a good idea to just spray off your bike with some water. If you have a hose or a rag that you can wet down with water, and even maybe a little bit of dish soap works well. Just with that, try not to spray the part. I'm trying to think of the name. So the bottom bracket, kind of where the cranks and the pedals meet the frame of the bike. So that's called your bottom bracket. Try not to spray that part of it, because there's a lot of grease in there and you don't want to get water in that part of the bike. But Everywhere else is pretty much, I would say, fair game. You can hose it down and yeah, just check your chain to make sure it's not too greasy, dry. Check your tires. You know, every time you go out for a ride, those are things you want to look for: brakes, air in tires, chain. But these trails are not going to do anything major to your bike that a road wouldn't do.
Okay, and Ollie is mentioning, don't ever use WD-40 on your chain. And
Yeah, stick to regular, I would say, bicycle lubricant that you can get in any bike shop. For sure, that's a good point.
yeah, it does a great attraction to grease and dirt and dust. And then someone asked if you would please mention that about the bottom bracket again and
Yeah.
hosing off your bike.
Yeah, so your bike can handle water generally. If you want to clean it off with a hose or something, I just would say avoid spraying it directly, like a hose directly at the bottom bracket, just because there are bearings in there that have a lot of grease, and if it's not good if water gets in there. It's not like the world will not end if a little water gets there, but just a rule of thumb I would go by. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does. And I know around the bearings is a good place not to, in the fork, not to get too much water along those lines. And Ollie was saying they'd use the WD-40 on the brakes. So that was, again, no, don't do that. Go to your bike shop and they will recommend that really light oil, as you were saying. That's the best place to get it. That there is special oil, but yeah, cleaning your bike and doing the ABCs afterwards is really important to make sure your tires, chain, everything. Lawrence has got a question here. Any updates on the availability of buying a bicycle? He said the bicycle quality or quantity is very short. And I know even I was in Ski Rack the other day asking them about bikes in preparation for this workshop. And they were saying that they normally have the swap and trade show go on, and they just didn't have a good availability, and hoping by August that they will have some bikes. Tree mentioned that used bikes can be found at Old Spokes. And someone is asking if you could show the ABC slide again. I think we have just a few moments. That would work if Mary Catherine can get her slide up for you. That would be great. There you go. Look at that. Wonders of technology.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly about the availability of bikes. Unfortunately, it's just crazy right now, and many bike shops are out of inventory. But Old Spokes is one of our partners. Great recommendation, because they get bikes that are donated to them that don't come from a distributor. They might have more availability. They refurb donated bikes, so that is a good recommendation. Thanks, Tree.
So here's the ABC.
Oh, Free Ride in Montpelier, another good recommendation, does refurbed bikes. And yep, it's a good one too.
Oh, that's great. I'd love the fact that everybody's sharing. That's so important. And one thing we really would love people to do, if you can attend each one of the different sessions that AARP and Local Motion are putting on the second Thursday of every month, keep a journal of of where you've been riding, and we'll use that too as a part of community share of what rides you found were really good, or what challenges you found when you rode, and things to think about with regards to that. So keep a journal so that we can refer back to that as far as things that we found during the summer have been great. We'll have that program in September along those lines. All right. Any other questions? Okay, here's a friend that said that they missed registering. Yes, we will be posting this link, and it will go to the AARP YouTube that other friends of yours can refer back to. Just the registered folks will get the link to start out with, and then it'll be posted on the YouTube channel. So it'll all be there for you to get. Any other last comments, Eliana, before we sign off for today?
I think that's all I have, but I just want to say thank you to this audience. It's really wonderful having such an amazingly engaged group of people. I love talking about bikes, and so I'm really happy to share that with all of you.
Excellent. And aarp.org/VT is a place where you can find other kinds of programs, as we were mentioning, baking, lectures, movies, paint and sip, one day university. So many opportunities out there to keep yourself busy if you need another rainy day activity. Otherwise, enjoy, get on your bikes and ride, and hopefully we'll see you all next month. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.